I kneel on the attic floor, hands trembling as I touch paper scattered like fallen leaves around me. 263 envelopes, every single one stamped in angry red ink. Return to sender, address unknown. My fingers close around a birthday card meant for a 10-year-old. The cartoon bear on front grins stupidly, unaware of the decade it spent traveling nowhere. Inside, a crisp $10 bill slides free, and handwriting loops across the page in fading blue ink. Marlo, con yêu, năm nay con 10 tuổi. Bà trồng thêm lavender tím đậm, màu bà nghĩ con thích nhất. Bà nhớ con mỗi ngày. Về nhà với bà, con gái. The Vietnamese endearment feels foreign on the page, yet something in my chest recognizes it. I stare at the pile surrounding me, each envelope a failed attempt at connection, and the math crashes down like a physical weight. 18 years. Every birthday, every Christmas, every milestone I thought no one cared about. My grandmother never stopped trying, and I spent those same years believing I was nothing more than a clerical error, a burden the world had correctly discarded. 5 days ago, I didn't know this attic existed. 5 days ago, I was signing papers in a fluorescent-lit office, officially aging out of a system that had defined every moment of my existence since infancy. 5 days ago, I had $247 and a bus ticket west, running toward nothing, because staying felt like drowning. Now I sit among the wreckage of love I never knew I had, and the silence of this Montana farmhouse presses against my eardrums like accumulated grief, demanding release. The ballpoint pen skipped when I signed my name that Thursday morning. Marlo Grace Miller. The ink left gaps in the letters, blank spaces where the flow died out. Appropriate, I thought then, because my entire file read the same way. Gaps where information should have been. A story written with a dying instrument. The caseworker didn't look up from her folder, glasses sliding down her nose as she shuffled papers into bureaucratic order. Her name was something forgettable. They'd all been forgettable. 5 caseworkers in 3 years, each one cycling through before learning I preferred being called anything except my full first name. Marlo sounded like someone with parents who read poetry and chose names with intention. That girl probably had a dinner table and bedtime stories and a bedroom that stayed hers for more than 6 months. I'd stopped being her somewhere around age 7, in a group home that smelled like industrial cleaner and the particular sadness of too many children learning too early that the world doesn't owe anyone softness. The woman finally glanced up, offering a smile that had been photocopied too many times to hold genuine warmth. Her lips moved with practiced efficiency. All right, you're all set. State's obligation ends effective immediately. Do you have a place to stay tonight? The lie tasted like copper, familiar and necessary. I'm fine. I've got a plan. No plan existed beyond surviving. The foster care system had taught me survival looks like keeping your head down, your expectations lower, and your escape routes mapped. I had $320 from under-the-table construction cleanup jobs, money I'd hidden in my sock drawer because foster siblings learned to steal before they learned trust. My backpack held everything I owned. 3 shirts, 2 pairs of jeans, a sketchbook with a broken spine, and a toothbrush sealed in a plastic baggie. The glass doors of the Department of Social Services building gave way to Portland's gray afternoon. Diesel exhaust mixed with wet concrete and the sour garbage smell from the alley between buildings. Freedom tasted nothing like triumph. It tasted like vacuum, like the moment after a door closes and you realize no one's on the other side checking if you made it through. I had $47 more than I'd calculated. Found them in my jacket pocket that morning, a 20 and some ones I'd forgotten about. 247 total. The number felt oddly specific, like the universe offering a cosmic joke about precision in poverty. My plan, such as it was, involved a greyhound heading toward California. Why California? Because it was far. Because the sun set there, and I liked the idea of chasing the end of something. Because staying in Portland meant running into caseworkers who'd ask how I was doing, and I didn't have the energy to construct the lie. I shouldered my backpack, adjusting the straps digging into my shoulders, and started walking toward the bus station 6 blocks north. The weight distribution was off. I'd packed wrong, putting the heavier items too high, but repacking meant acknowledging how little I had, and I wasn't ready for that particular truth yet. 3 blocks from salvation, a voice caught me mid-stride. Marlo Miller. My body tensed before conscious thought registered the words. 18 years in the system builds reflexes. When strangers know your name, trouble follows. My hand tightened on the backpack strap, shoulders rising, weight shifting to my back foot, ready to run. A man leaned against a black sedan parked in the loading zone, looking like he'd wandered out of a different tax bracket. His suit wasn't expensive, but it fit properly. Gray wool that seemed too warm for the season. Tired lines carved trenches around his eyes, the kind of exhaustion that has nothing to do with sleep and everything to do with carrying other people's grief for a living. His hand extended, offering a business card held between 2 fingers with unexpected politeness. My name is Silas Montgomery. I'm a probate attorney. I've been trying to locate you for 7 months. The card stayed suspended between us. I didn't take it, just stared at his hand until he lowered it with a small nod of understanding. I don't need a lawyer. I haven't done anything. The incident at the group home last year flickered through my memory. That had been settled. They'd called it mutual combat after the other girl admitted she'd thrown the first punch. Self-defense wasn't a crime, not even in the system's warped logic. Silas's voice dropped a register, softening in a way that made my skin prickle with suspicion. I'm not here because you're in trouble, Marlo. I'm here because your grandmother passed away 3 months ago. You're the sole heir to her estate. The laugh that escaped my throat sounded harsh even to my own ears, making a woman walking a small dog across the street flinch and quicken her pace. You've got the wrong person. I don't have a grandmother. I don't have anyone. I was a surrender baby. No family history. Blank slate. That's what the file says. Something shifted in Silas's expression. Pity. Real, genuine pity in a stranger's eyes, and I hated it more than I'd hated anything in weeks. Pity meant people saw you as less than, as broken, as someone whose story ended before it began. You had a grandmother, Cecilia Bennett, and a grandfather, Thaddeus Bennett. They owned a farm in Cedar Falls, Montana, 160 acres. It's yours now. The house, the land, everything on it. His hand disappeared into his jacket pocket, emerging with a heavy key ring. 3 keys caught the dull afternoon light. 2 large brass ones tarnished with age. 1 smaller silver key that looked almost delicate compared to its companions. It's a long drive, but it's yours. No mortgage, no liens. Just a farmhouse called Lavender Hill. I stared at the keys, metal gleaming dully in his palm, and wanted to throw them in the gutter. Wanted to walk away, get on that bus, disappear into California's sprawling anonymity. If I'd had family, where had they been? Where was this grandmother when I was 10 and hiding in a closet because my foster father had discovered bourbon and rage made good companions? Where was this grandfather when I was 15 and sleeping in Peninsula Park because my latest placement had decided 1 teenager was manageable, but 2 meant chaos? The sudden existence of these people felt like betrayal deeper than their absence. It meant I hadn't just been lost. I'd been ignored, known about, and dismissed. But I looked at those keys. then calculated the weight of $247 against California rent prices. That money wouldn't last a week in any city worth reaching. My hand closed around the cold metal. If I sell it, how much is it worth? Silas hesitated, glancing away with the expression of someone delivering news he knew would disappoint. The market out there isn't robust. The house needs work. It's been vacant a while. But the land might be enough to give you a start somewhere else, if that's what you want. Perfect. Exactly what I needed. I'm going to sell every inch of it. The journey took 3 days because poverty makes everything slower. I couldn't afford a plane ticket, so I spent $89 on a Greyhound ticket, watching my survival fund shrink to $158 as the bus pulled away from Portland Station. The bus smelled like industrial disinfectant layered over old sandwiches and human exhaustion. I claimed a window seat in the back, pressing my forehead against the glass as the city dissolved into suburbs, then strip malls, then the rolling green emptiness of the Midwest. My reflection stared back from the dark window. Thin face, dark circles, hair I'd cut myself 3 weeks ago because salon money felt like luxury when eating regularly was still a negotiation. I pulled out my phone, its cracked screen showing 14% battery. No charger. I'd left it in the last placement and couldn't afford a replacement. 14% to last until Montana. Google search, Cecilia Bennett, Montana obituary. The first result loaded slowly, eating precious battery life. Cecilia May Bennett, 76, passed away peacefully at her home. Longtime resident of Cedar Falls, survived by no known family. No known family. The words punched through my ribs, sharp and precise. So what was I? A mistake in the county records? A child who'd fallen through cracks so wide the system didn't bother recording the drop? I clicked through 3 more pages, found nothing about Thaddeus except a death notice from 5 years prior. Same phrase. No known family. My battery dropped to 11%. I powered down the phone and watched Idaho roll past, then Montana's mountains rising like accusations against the sky. The sky here terrified me in ways I hadn't anticipated. In Portland, sky existed as a narrow strip of blue between buildings, rationed and controllable. Here it spread from horizon to horizon, a massive dome pressing down with its bigness, making me feel exposed and insignificant. No buildings to hide between, no alleys offering escape. Just open space that went on forever, indifferent to whether anyone filled it. The bus dropped me in Helena at 6 in the morning. I stood in the parking lot with my backpack and $158, watching the Greyhound disappear toward its next destination, and felt the first real flutter of doubt. A trucker hauling lumber agreed to take me the final 50 miles for $20. He didn't ask questions, just nodded when I gave the address and pointed to the passenger seat of his semi. The cab smelled like coffee and cigarette smoke, familiar in a way that didn't comfort. He dropped me at a gravel service road marked by a rotting wooden post, hand-painted letters, barely visible. Lavender Hill Farm. That's the Bennett place up that way, about a mile in. Nobody's been up that road in a long time. Good luck, kid. Gravel crunched under my boots as I started walking, backpack straps cutting into my shoulders with each step. The air felt different here. Thinner, sharper. It hurt my lungs in a way that felt almost clean after years of breathing Portland's exhaust-thick atmosphere. I crested the hill, and smell hit me like a physical presence. Not manure or farm stink like I'd expected. Floral. Sweet. Herbaceous. Like walking into an expensive soap store, except earthier, wilder, more insistent. The scent hung heavy in the afternoon heat, coating my tongue when I breathed through my mouth. The house emerged from a valley surrounded by purple and gray. Lavender fields stretched in every direction, overgrown and fighting a losing battle with weeds, but the plants themselves seemed determined to survive despite abandonment. The flowers created an ocean of color that moved in waves when wind pushed through. Victorian architecture rose 2 stories, white paint peeling away to expose gray, weathered wood beneath. The roof showed gaps where shingles had given up. The porch sagged on the left side, listing like something that had suffered a stroke. Beside the house stood a barn, red paint faded to rust brown, looking more structurally sound than it had any right to be. My heart sank. I'd hoped for something a developer might want, something that could be flipped quickly for cash. This looked like a money pit. This looked like responsibility I didn't have the skills or resources to handle. I climbed the porch steps, wood groaning protest under my weight. The brass key slid into the lock, but refused to turn. I stood there sweating in the sun, jiggling metal against metal, shoulder already prepped to force the door, when finally the mechanism gave way with a loud clack that echoed across the empty valley. I put my weight against wood and shoved. The door shrieked on rusted hinges, swinging inward to reveal darkness. Inside, silence had weight, different from outside quiet. This was the silence of held breath, of spaces waiting for occupants who'd never return. Dust motes danced in shafts of light, cutting through yellowed lace curtains, swirling in the air I'd disturbed by entering. I dropped my backpack on the floor, the thud raising a small cloud of gray powder that caught the light. Everything remained exactly as if people had just stepped out. A coat rack by the door held a man's flannel jacket and a woman's wool shawl. Rubber mat near the entrance supported a pair of muddy boots, the dried mud crumbling with age into powder. I walked deeper into the house, floorboards creaking announcements of my presence. The kitchen held a calendar on the wall, turned to January of this year. A coffee mug sat in the sink, dark ring at the bottom where liquid had evaporated and left its ghost. Prescription bottles lined the counter, heart medication, blood pressure pills, arthritis treatment. Names on the labels: Thaddeus Bennett, Cecilia Bennett. Anger surged hot and sharp from my stomach up through my chest. These people had lived entire lives here. They'd had coffee mugs and calendars and morning routines. They'd watched the news, ate breakfast at this table, walked through these rooms wearing those boots. And I'd been nothing to them. Less than nothing. A ghost they hadn't bothered acknowledging. I said the words aloud to the empty room, voice flat and intrusive against the silence. I'm selling it all. Every stick of furniture, every acre. The living room held a violin in the corner, old wood darkened with age and use. Photo albums lined shelves, dust-covered but intact. I pulled one down, fingers leaving trails in the gray coating, and flipped it open. Pictures of people I didn't know living lives I'd never been part of. A young woman, maybe 16, visibly pregnant, standing in a lavender field. Her smile looked uncertain, like she was trying to convince the camera she was happy. I turned the photo over. Handwriting on back, ink faded but legible. Elena and baby, June 2006. My mother. The woman who'd carried me and then, what? Given me away? Died? Disappeared? I searched through more albums, finding nothing that explained. Just images of a life that had happened without me. The master bedroom upstairs held a bed still made with faded quilts, a dresser with cheap costume jewelry scattered across its surface. The second bedroom looked frozen in time. Posters of bands from 20 years ago, a desk with textbooks, a bulletin board with notes and reminders pinned to cork. Elena's room, preserved like a shrine to someone who'd left and never came back. I needed to know structural damage for selling purposes. The narrow staircase to the attic beckoned, and I climbed into heat trapped under an uninsulated roof. The space cramped full of boxes, broken furniture, old farming equipment that had outlived its usefulness. In the corner, under a grime-streaked window overlooking lavender fields, sat a steamer trunk. Better quality than anything else in the house, heavy leather with brass fittings. I dragged it into better light, metal scraping against floorboards with a sound like nails on slate. The latches popped open easily. No lock, no resistance. Inside, paper. Stacks of journals bound in leather, smelling of mildew and old vanilla. I lifted the top one. Date on the cover, 18 years ago. The year I was born. I told myself I was looking for financial records, deeds, anything legal that might affect the sale. But curiosity betrayed me, fingers opening the journal to its first page. Handwriting looped elegant across the page in fountain pen blue ink. June 12th. The heat broke today. Thaddeus worries about the lower field. Drought is taking everything. We're down to our last savings. If the bank doesn't give us the extension, I don't know where we'll go. I skimmed forward. Chronicle of struggle. Crops failing. Machinery breaking. Life lived on the razor's edge of poverty. Then the entries changed tone. July 4th. Elena is home. My beautiful girl. She's trying to hide it, but a mother knows. She's 6 months along. She won't say who the father is, only that he's gone. She's so small, so scared. I froze, fingers pressing hard against paper. August 20th. Tragedy struck this house yesterday. The boy Elena loved, the seasonal hand from the Higgins farm, was killed in the thresher. Colton was only 19. Elena hasn't spoken since she heard. She just sits in the rocking chair, staring at the fields. She doesn't eat. She doesn't sleep. September 15th. The baby came early. A girl. Marlo Grace. She has Thaddeus's eyes. But Elena, oh God help us. She can't hold it. She screams if we bring the baby near. The doctor says it's grief, shock, depression so deep it's drowning her. She's taking the baby down with her into darkness. I turned pages, hands shaking so hard the journal nearly slipped from my grip. October 1st. The social worker came again. She looked at our empty cupboards, at Thaddeus's coughing that won't stop, at my hands, so swollen with arthritis I can barely hold a spoon, at the foreclosure notice on the table. She looked at Elena, who hasn't bathed or eaten in days, who can't look at her own child without sobbing. The woman told us we have a choice. Let the state take Marlo to a temporary foster home where she'll be fed and warm, or wait for them to take her by force when the bank evicts us next month. My breathing stopped. The narrative I'd constructed my entire existence around crumbled like the dried mud on those boots downstairs. I read the entry dated 2 weeks later, handwriting shaky, blotchy, as if the writer had been crying while forming letters. October 14th. I held my granddaughter for the last time today. Elena sang her the lavender lullaby, the first time she's sung in months. We told ourselves this is love, letting her have a chance at a better life. The system can give her food, warmth, safety. We are too old, too poor, too sick. We're failing her by keeping her. But I've never felt such pain. It feels like tearing off a limb while conscious. The journal fell from my hands, hitting the floor with a thud that sent dust pluming into light. I stood, pacing the small attic space, chest heaving. They hadn't abandoned me. They'd surrendered me to save me. They'd thought they were giving me a better life. The words tore out of my throat, voice cracking against wood and dust. You were wrong. You were so fucking wrong. If they'd only known. If they'd seen the group homes with mold in the showers. The foster fathers who locked the refrigerator. The feeling of being a transaction rather than a person. They'd thought they were sending me to safety. They'd sent me to survive, not to live. I stormed downstairs and out onto the porch. Sunset painted long shadows across lavender fields, purple flowers looking almost black in the fading light. The scent overwhelmed, cloying and thick and inescapable. My hands gripped the railing until knuckles turned white. I'd planned to call a realtor in the morning, planned to sell and never look back. But now ghosts had voices. My mother wasn't a junkie who discarded me. She was a 16-year-old girl shattered by grief. My grandparents weren't heartless. They'd been desperate. I looked at the swaying lavender and something shifted in my chest. I couldn't leave yet. Not until I understood the full story. Not until I knew why they never came back for me once the crisis passed. The mattress in my grandfather's room sagged in the middle, sheets smelling like cedar and Old Spice. I lay awake for hours, listening to the house settle around me. Timbers groaned and popped as temperature dropped, sounding exactly like footsteps in the hallway. Sleep came eventually, restless and fractured. Morning sun woke me, disoriented and stiff. For several seconds, I forgot where I was. Then the peeling wallpaper came into focus and everything rushed back. I found a metal percolator in the kitchen cupboard, made coffee without cream because the powdered stuff in the jar had solidified into a single rock. Drank it black, bitter, standing at the window watching lavender fields move in morning breeze. The kitchen drawer I'd opened yesterday called to me. I'd seen the envelopes but not examined them. Now, with coffee and daylight, I pulled the entire stack free. They cascaded across the kitchen table. Dozens, maybe hundreds. Every single one marked with that damning red stamp. Return to sender. Address unknown. Every address identical. Marlo Miller, care of Oregon State Foster Care Services. My hands moved without conscious direction, opening the first envelope. Birthday card. Cartoon bear holding balloons. A $10 bill fell out, crisp and new despite years in an envelope. Marlo con yêu. Chúc mừng sinh nhật lên 10. Bà và ông nghĩ về con mỗi ngày. Năm nay bà trồng thêm lavender, màu tím đậm, màu bà nghĩ con thích nhất. Ông nói mỗi khi xe bus trường đi qua, ông ngừng làm việc để nhìn. Just in case, con tên đỏ. Another envelope. Christmas. Tissue paper wrapping something small. A knitted scarf, purple like lavender, soft against my fingers. Con yêu. Bà gửi qua nhưng chúng bị trả lại. Bà không biết tại sao. Bà chỉ muốn con ấm. Yêu con mãi. Bà. Another. Birthday. Age 15. Marlo. Bà vẫn chờ. Bà không bao giờ ngừng tìm kiếm. Nếu con nhận được điều này, xin hãy viết lại. Chỉ một lời. Để bà biết con ổn. High school graduation card, sent to an address I'd left 2 months before it arrived. Bà tự hào về con, dù bà không biết con như thế nào. Bà tin con mạnh mẽ. Con phải mạnh mẽ để sống sót. Về nhà con gái. Về nhà với bà. I counted, methodical, precise. 263 envelopes. Every birthday from age 1 to 18. Every Christmas. Every major holiday. Every milestone a grandmother might mark. 18 years of love, rejected by a bureaucratic system that moved me too often, changed my paperwork too frequently, lost track of addresses and placements with the efficiency of a machine designed to process rather than protect. The bureaucracy hadn't been cruel. It had been indifferent. And indifference kills just as effectively as malice. I sank to the floor, envelopes surrounding me like evidence of a crime. The crime of systems failing children. The crime of good intentions buried under red tape. The crime of love unable to reach the person it was meant for. My forehead pressed against the cold linoleum. The sound escaping my throat wasn't quite crying. It was something raw. A wound finally exposed to air after 18 years of festering beneath scar tissue. My chest heaved with sobs that felt like they were tearing through muscle and bone to reach the surface. 263 attempts, 18 years of trying. While I sat in group homes thinking I was invisible, a mountain of love was being returned to sender. I'd believed I was unwanted. I'd built an entire identity around being the girl nobody chose, nobody kept, nobody loved enough to fight for. And I'd been wrong. They'd fought. They just fought a system designed to lose people like me in its cracks. I stayed on that floor until sunset painted the kitchen orange and gold. Read every letter, every card, every desperate attempt at connection. By the time light failed, I knew my grandmother's handwriting better than my own signature. The next morning brought sound I didn't recognize. An engine. Vehicle approaching. I went to the window, still wearing yesterday's clothes, eyes swollen from crying. A black BMW pulled up the gravel drive, expensive and out of place against the farmhouse's decay. A man emerged, early 50s maybe, wearing a suit that cost more than everything I owned. His shoes were polished to mirror shine, ridiculous for a farm visit. He climbed the porch steps with the confidence of someone who owned everywhere he walked. His knot came firm against wood. I opened the door, positioning myself in the frame to block entry. He smiled, the expression not reaching his eyes. Marlo Miller. My name in his mouth felt like violation. Yes, I'm Preston Wolf. I own the land from here south to the county line. He extended a business card. Wolf Agricultural Holdings, LLC. I didn't take it. Just stood there, waiting. His smile tightened fractionally. I heard you're Cecilia's heir. Welcome home. I have an offer for you. $120,000 cash, closing in 2 weeks. You won't need to fix anything. I'll buy as is. The number hung between us. More money than I'd ever imagined having. Enough to start over anywhere. I kept my face neutral. That's below market value. His expression shifted, calculation visible behind the friendly mask. But you'll owe $6,200 in property taxes by month's end. This house needs extensive repairs. The roof alone is $15,000. Finding a buyer out here takes time. With my offer, you walk away with cash today. Go back to Portland. Start fresh. Something in his tone made my spine straighten. I need time to think. The friendliness evaporated like morning dew. What replaced it was colder, more dangerous. You're 18 years old, Marlo. You don't know anything about farming. Winter here is brutal. This house is isolated, remote. Young girls alone in places like this, well, bad things can happen. The threat landed soft but unmistakable. I'm giving you 48 hours. Think very carefully. He descended the steps, got in his BMW, and drove away, leaving dust hanging in the air like a question mark. I stood on the porch, hands shaking, not from fear, from recognition. I'd grown up in the system. I knew bullies, knew how they dressed up threats and concern, how they smiled while planning to take what they wanted. Preston Wolf wanted this land badly enough to threaten an 18-year-old girl he'd just met. That meant something here mattered more than he'd admitted. I went back inside, looked at the 263 letters still scattered across the kitchen table. My grandmother had held this place against everything. Held it for me. For 18 years. I wouldn't let some suit in a BMW take it just because he thought a foster kid wouldn't fight back. But first, I needed to understand what I was fighting for. Why these letters never reached me. What else my grandmother had tried. Tomorrow I'd go to the bank. Tonight I'd read every journal in that attic. I'd learn who Cecilia and Thaddeus Bennett were. I'd learn who my mother had been before grief destroyed her. And then I'd decide whether to fight or flee. Outside, lavender fields swayed in evening breeze, purple waves moving like water under a darkening sky. The scent drifted through open windows, thick and sweet, and somehow familiar in a way I couldn't quite name. Somewhere in my earliest memories, buried under years of trauma and displacement, maybe someone had held me while that smell surrounded us both. Maybe I'd been sung to sleep with lavender on the wind. Or maybe I was just desperate for anything that felt like belonging. Either way, I wasn't ready to give it up. Not yet. Not to a man who smiled like a predator and drove a car worth more than most people's homes. 48 hours, he'd said. I had 48 hours to find out what was worth threatening an orphan over. 48 hours to decide if I was brave enough to stay or smart enough to take the money and run. The letters rustled in the evening breeze coming through the door I'd left open. 263 attempts at love, all failed by systems and circumstances. But I'd received the message anyway. 18 years late, but received. My grandmother had never stopped trying. Maybe I owed it to her not to give up either. Morning light cuts through curtains I never closed, waking me sprawled across Thaddeus's bed, still wearing yesterday's clothes. For 3 heartbeats I don't remember where I am, then reality crashes back and I roll upright, joints protesting. The clock on the nightstand reads 7:43. I've slept maybe 4 hours, dreaming of envelopes flying away like birds every time I reached for them. Downstairs I managed to resurrect the percolator, drinking yesterday's coffee grounds because I can't find fresh ones. The bitterness matches my mood. Preston's 48-hour deadline ticks in my head like a bomb timer. 40 hours remain. I'm washing my face in the kitchen sink when an engine rumbles up the drive. My body goes rigid, hands dripping, expecting the BMW. Instead, a faded Ford pickup parks near the barn. An older woman climbs out, moving with the careful deliberation of someone whose joints have argued with manual labor for decades. She wears denim overalls and work boots caked in mud, gray hair pulled into a bun so tight it must hurt. In her hands, a casserole dish wrapped in checkered cloth. She marches up the steps, assessing me with eyes that have seen through better liars than I'll ever be. "You the squatter?" Her voice scrapes like sandpaper on wood. I cross my arms, still dripping. "I'm the owner, Marlo Miller." She stops mid-step, leans forward, squinting. Her gaze sweeps my face, lingers on my jawline, my eyes. Something in her expression fractures. Suspicion replaced by grief so raw, I take a step back. Lord have mercy. You've got Thaddeus's eyes and Cecilia's chin. She pushes past me into the kitchen, sets the dish on the counter with authority that suggests she's done this 1,000 times. "I'm Ruth Henderson. Live 2 miles that direction. Brought chicken pot pie. You look like you haven't eaten in a week." The observation stings because it's accurate. I haven't thought about food since Portland. "Thanks. Did you know them?" Ruth's dry laugh sounds like leaves crunching underfoot. "Know them? I delivered your mother in the back bedroom. I sat with Cecilia when Thaddeus passed. I drove Elena to the hospital the night she died." The floor tilts. I grip the counter edge. My mother died in a hospital? Ruth's face shifts, sharp assessment giving way to something closer to horror. Car accident.
Ice on the bridge over I-90. She was 20. You were barely 3.
You mean they never told you? My voice comes out strangled. They told me I was abandoned. They told me nobody wanted me. I didn't know she died. I didn't know anything. Ruth shakes her head, looking at the fields beyond the window. That's a lie. A goddamn lie. This whole house died the day you left. Thaddeus used to play violin on that porch every evening. Never touched it again after they took you. They worked themselves into graves trying to scrape together money to bring you home. Elena was the one handling lawyers. She knew where you were. The question erupts before I can stop it, anger and confusion tangling into accusation. Then why didn't they come after she died? If they wanted me, why did I wait 18 years? Ruth points toward the ceiling, toward the attic I'd invaded yesterday. They didn't have rights, child. When Elena died, the paperwork died with her. They tried. God knows they tried.
Go look in those boxes upstairs. The ones taped shut. Don't ask me. Ask them. She turns and walks back to her truck before I can formulate response. The engine starts, hesitates. She leans out the window. I'll be back tomorrow. Show you how to handle that lavender. It's choking itself to death out there. Needs a hard hand to save it. Dust plumes behind her departure. I stand in the kitchen holding a casserole I didn't ask for, given by a woman who knew my family better than I ever will. And the math refuses to add up. Elena knew where I was, had lawyers, was coming for me. And then she died. I spend the next hour tearing through the attic with new purpose, past the journals I'd already violated, deeper into stacks of boxes sealed with yellowing packing tape. My keys aren't sharp enough to cut through, so I use a broken chair leg, splintering wood against cardboard until the first box surrenders. Legal documents. Dozens of them. Correspondence with attorneys dated 2009 through 2017. Letters requesting information about Marlo Miller, currently in Oregon State custody. Denials. More requests. More denials. One letter from a family court judge dated 2011. Petitioners lack standing. Voluntary relinquishment papers signed by both parents terminate grandparent rights. Petition denied. Both parents. But my father died before I was born. I dig deeper. Find Elena's signature on a document from September 2006, 1 month after my birth. Temporary voluntary placement for emergency relief, signed by Elena Marie Miller. And beside it, a second signature. Colton James Graves. My father hadn't died before I was born. He'd died 2 months before, but he'd signed paperwork after his death because someone had forged it, or the dates were wrong, or the entire system was built on lies held together with bureaucratic tape. Another box yields private investigator reports. Someone named Thaddeus Bennett paid a man called J. Morrison $8,000 between 2015 and 2017 to locate and monitor Marlo Grace Miller. The reports come monthly, clinical. Subject currently placed with Anderson family, Northeast Portland. Subject observed at Lincoln High School. Subject relocated to Miller Street Group Home following incident. The final report, dated May 2017. Per client request, surveillance discontinued. Client states he cannot pursue contact at this time. He found me. My grandfather found me when I was 11 and then stopped looking.
Rage floods hot and immediate. I throw the report across the attic, watching papers scatter like accusations. The small silver key burns in my pocket where I've kept it since Silas handed over the ring. I remember his words. Safe deposit box at the local bank. Cedar Falls proves smaller than small when I drive there 40 minutes later in Thaddeus's ancient pickup truck.
I'd found keys hanging by the door, and the engine had turned over after 3 attempts, belching smoke and grinding gears designed for someone who understood clutches. I don't, but I learned fast, stalling twice before reaching pavement. Main Street spans maybe 6 blocks. Half the storefronts stand empty, for lease signs faded in windows. The bank occupies a brick building that probably seemed impressive in 1960, now just tired and persistent. Inside, a woman behind the desk glances up from her computer. Her name placard reads, Diane Foster, branch manager. She's maybe 55, wearing a cardigan despite the heat. Her eyes widen when I approach. Oh my God, you look just like her. Like Elena. The words hit like physical contact. I'm Marlo, Cecilia's granddaughter. Diane stands, comes around the desk, seems ready to hug me, then thinks better of it. We heard someone inherited, but nobody knew if you'd come. I'm so sorry for your loss. Cecilia was a wonderful woman. I hold up the silver key. Silas Montgomery said there's a box here, under my name. Diane's professional mask slips back into place, though her eyes remain damp.
Of course. Right this way.
The vault is smaller than I expected, just a closet-sized room lined with metal drawers. Diane uses my key and a master to open box 247. The number makes me flinch. Same as the dollars I'd started with.
I'll give you privacy. She retreats, closing the vault door most of the way. Inside the box, currency bound with rubber bands. I count $28,500 in hundreds and fifties. Money that smells like old paper and patience. Alongside the cash, documents I'd expect. Birth certificates, marriage license, death certificates. And an envelope, sealed with wax that's cracked with age. Letters pressed into the wax spell out one word. Marlo,
written across the front in handwriting I recognize from the journals. To Marlo, only open when you're ready to know the truth. My hands shake, opening it. The wax crumbles, releasing the flap. Inside, pages filled with blue fountain pen ink, the same elegant script from Cecilia's journals, but shakier, written by hands that hurt. The date at the top, March 2019, 2 months before Thaddeus died according to his death certificate. Marlo Conyo, if you're reading this, I've passed and you found your way home. I'm sorry I couldn't meet you while I still breathed. There's truth I need to tell you. Truth your grandmother never knew because I wanted to protect her from more pain. In 2017, I found you. The private investigator located you in Portland, living with a family named Anderson. You were 11 years old, playing basketball in a schoolyard. I drove there, stood across the street for 3 hours watching you play. You had your grandmother's laugh, your mother's determination. You made a shot and your whole face lit up like sunrise. I wanted to run to you, wanted to hold you, tell you everything. But I spoke to your social worker first. She said you'd finally found stability, had friends, had routine. She said if I appeared now, a stranger claiming to be your grandfather, it would disrupt your placement, might cause you to be moved again. So I stood there watching you until the school bell rang. Then I drove back to Montana. It was the hardest choice I've ever made. But here's what I didn't put in my letters to Cecilia. You didn't stay with the Andersons. According to later reports, you were moved 4 more times in the next 2 years. I could have made a difference.
I chose wrong. I don't ask your forgiveness because I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that every evening, I stood at the end of our driveway looking toward the highway, hoping someday you'd drive up that road. Your mother loved you so desperately, it broke her. She just wasn't strong enough then. But she died trying to come back for you. This farm is yours. Not because I'm trying to buy forgiveness, but because it was always yours, from the moment you were born. If you hate me, I understand. If you sell this land and never look back, I understand that too. But if you stay, you'll find home. I promise you that. Ilk on my, own Thaddeus. The vault floor is cold and hard when I collapse onto it, letter clutched against my chest. Diane must hear something because she appears in the doorway, face creased with concern. Honey, are you all right? What tears from my chest isn't grief yet. It's something raw, the collapse of every wall I built to protect myself from caring. It's the sound of realizing that love had been there all along, waiting on the other side of barriers I'd constructed from 18 years of being told I was disposable. Diane helps me to a chair in her office, brings water I don't drink. She doesn't ask questions, just sits with me while I shatter and slowly, carefully, try to piece myself back together. When I can speak again, my voice sounds like I've been screaming. He found me. He was there. And he left. Diane's hand covers mine. Thaddeus Bennett was the best man I knew. If he left, he had his reasons. And they destroyed him. I look at her. How do you know? Because he came here that same week, updated his will, left everything to you even though he didn't know if you'd ever come home. He told me, if she finds this place, she'll know she was loved. That's all I can give her now. The money from the box sits in my backpack as I drive back to Lavender Hill. $28,500, enough to pay property taxes and make repairs. Enough to give me options beyond Preston's bullying offer. But I don't feel relief. I feel hollowed out, like someone reached inside and scooped away everything I thought I knew about being unwanted. Back at the house, I stand in the doorway of Elena's room. I've avoided it since that first brief look, but now I enter with purpose. The posters are peeling at corners, images of bands I don't recognize. The desk holds textbooks from community college, early childhood development, introduction to psychology, English composition. She'd been trying to build something, trying to become someone who could mother. Under the bed, my searching fingers find a box I'd missed before. Small, wooden, with an ornate lock. The silver key from Silas's ring fits perfectly. Inside, photographs. A boy around 19, handsome in the way teenage boys are before life etches experience into their faces. He's laughing in one photo, standing beside a tractor. The back reads, Colton, summer 2006. My father. Not a signature on forged paperwork, but a real person who'd existed and laughed and loved someone. Letters fill the box, written in masculine handwriting on lined paper. They're love letters, earnest and young and embarrassingly sincere. In one, Colton talks about saving money to get an apartment. In another, he mentions the baby. I can't wait to meet her. I'm going to be the dad mine never was. At the bottom of the box, a hospital bracelet. Baby Girl Miller, September 15th, 2006. And a lock of blonde hair tied with blue ribbon. But what breaks me is the notebook. College-ruled, spiral-bound, the cover labeled in Elena's neat handwriting. Plan to bring Marlowe home. Inside, the first page lists tasks. Finish GED. Done. June 2007. Get driver's license. Done. August 2007.
Find job, Seattle, higher pay. Done, September 2007. Save $1,200 for lawyer retainer. $1,150 saved. Save $800 for apartment deposit. $780 saved. Complete parenting classes. Enrolled. 6 months stable employment. 5 months complete. File family court petition. Target, October 2009. The following pages detail budgets down to the penny. 2 jobs, waitress, night shift gas station. Income versus expenses, every dollar accounted for. Tips today, $6.50. Savings for Marlowe, $4. Food, $2.50. Menu items, ramen, bread, peanut butter, rice. A note dated August 2009. Saw toy truck at store, $12. Didn't buy. Put $12 in Marlowe jar instead. She was starving herself, working 2 jobs, sleeping maybe 4 hours a night, all to save enough money to prove to a court she could provide. The unsent letters to me fill the next section. Written but never mailed because she had no address that would reach me. My beautiful girl. I'm in Seattle now. Cold and lonely, but I have your picture. Every penny is for you. I'm bringing you home to the lavender. We'll run through the fields together. I love you more than oxygen. Mommy. Another, dated June 2009. I have $1,100 saved, just $100 more for the lawyer. Met with her last week. She says we have a good case. I'm stable now. I have jobs, apartment. She's filing petition in 2 weeks. The final entry makes my hands go numb. October 20th, 2009. Tomorrow I go to court. Lawyer thinks we'll get visitation first, then shared custody, then full. Might take a year, but I don't care. I'll wait forever. Driving home to Montana this weekend to tell Mom and Dad. To tell them I'm ready. I'm bringing Marlowe home. She's 3 years old now. I've missed so much. But I'll make up every moment. Every single day for the rest of our lives. I promise, baby. I promise. Your mommy. Folded between pages, a newspaper clipping yellowed with age. Fatal accident on I-90, November 3rd, 2009. Elena Miller, 20, of Seattle, was killed in a single-vehicle accident on I-90 near Snoqualmie Pass. Police report icy conditions caused Miller's 1994 Honda Civic to lose control and strike a concrete barrier. Miller was pronounced dead at the scene. She is survived by her parents, William and Cecilia Bennett of Cedar Falls, Montana. And paperclip to the article, a court document stamped, approved. Petition for visitation granted. First visitation scheduled December 15th, 2009. She won. My mother fought the system and won. She was 6 weeks away from seeing me for the first time in 3 years. She was driving home to celebrate when she died. I sit on the floor of her room, surrounded by evidence of love I never received, and the weight of it all presses down until I can barely breathe. My mother didn't abandon me. She spent 3 years clawing her way back. She died in the attempt. Night falls while I stay there, reading and rereading her plan, her budgets, her unsent letters, trying to know the woman who made me through the architecture of her determination. Sometime after midnight, a sound outside jerks me from grief stupor. Engine. Footsteps. I move to the window. No headlights, but moonlight shows a truck parked by the barn. 2 figures moving through shadows. Fear spikes cold through my chest.
I grab my phone, battery at 4%, and creep downstairs. Through the kitchen window, I watch them work. One carries something, the other holds what looks like wire cutters. They're cutting the southern fence line, the one closest to Preston's property. Then I see it. One man sprays something on a section of lavender plants. Even from here, the chemical smell reaches me, acrid and wrong. Herbicide. They're poisoning the field. Rage overrides fear. I grab a flashlight from the counter and run outside, not thinking, just reacting. The beam catches them mid-act. Both men freeze, then bolt for their truck. I get close enough to see it's not Preston's BMW, but a beat-up Dodge, no plates visible. They're in and gone before I can get the license number, taillights disappearing down the access road. The damage reveals itself in daylight. 20 feet of fence cut and removed, approximately 50 lavender plants doused with something that's already turning leaves brown. The destruction is deliberate, targeted, meant to send a message. I understand the message. Leave, or this gets worse. My phone dies completely while I'm photographing the damage. No way to call police with a dead phone and no charger. The nearest neighbor is Ruth, 2 miles away, and I don't know which direction. I spend the morning trying to salvage poisoned plants, cutting away dead growth, but I don't know enough about farming to know if I'm helping or hurting. By noon, my hands are blistered, and I smell like chemicals and rage. Preston's truck appears around 1 p.m. Not the BMW this time, but a pickup that probably costs as much. He doesn't get out, just rolls down the window. 48 hours are up, Marlowe. What's your decision? I walk toward him, stopping 10 feet back, maintaining distance. Someone vandalized my property last night, cut my fence, poisoned my crops. His expression doesn't change. No surprise, no concern, just flat assessment. That's terrible. This area's gotten rough. Lots of vagrant traffic on the back roads. Dangerous for a young woman alone. Another reason to sell. Get somewhere safe. The threat isn't even veiled now. It's naked, standing between us in afternoon sun. I found letters, 263 of them, from my grandmother. She never gave up on this place, never gave up on me. Preston's jaw tightens fractionally. Sentimental but irrelevant. You need money for repairs, for taxes. I'm offering you a way out. Last offer, $120,000, cash, today. Or I withdraw the offer and you're on your own. Something in his certainty makes my spine straighten. No. The word comes out stronger than I feel. His smile disappears entirely. You're making a mistake. A big one. This farm, these fields, they're not worth what you think. And you're not equipped to handle what's coming. He shifts into reverse, starts backing up, then pauses. Winter here kills things, Marlowe. Weak things that can't survive. You should think about whether you want to be here when the cold comes. Dust trail marks his departure. I stand in it, coughing, and realize I've just declared war on someone with resources and connections and willingness to destroy what I'm trying to protect. My phone is dead. My nearest ally is Ruth, whose location I don't know. I have $28,000, but no idea how much repairs will actually cost. I have a vandalized fence and poisoned crops, and a growing certainty that Preston wants this land badly enough to escalate beyond threats. And I have 263 letters from a grandmother who fought for me when I didn't know she existed, and a mother who died trying to bring me home, and a grandfather who loved me enough to stay away because he thought it was best for me. I walk back into the house, into the kitchen where those letters still cover the table. Pick up the one from my 10th birthday. Read it again. Banyo con moi nai. Về nhà với bà, con gái. I remember you every day. Come home, my girl. I'm home now. And I'm not leaving just because some bully in an expensive truck wants to scare me away. But I need help. I need allies. I need to understand what makes this land valuable enough to threaten an orphan over. Tomorrow I'll find Ruth. Tomorrow I'll learn how to save poisoned lavender and repair cut fences. Tomorrow I'll start fighting back.
Tonight, I read my mother's plan again. Study her determination. Learn from her refusal to quit even when the system stacked itself against her. She fought for 3 years to reach me. I can fight long enough to keep what she died trying to give me. Outside, lavender fields sway in evening wind. Some plants are dying from poison, but most survive, purple and gray and stubborn, refusing to surrender to neglect or sabotage. I understand now why my grandmother named this place Lavender Hill. The flowers are survivors. They endure cold and drought and carelessness. They keep blooming anyway. Maybe I can do the same. Ruth's truck arrives at dawn, engine announcing her presence before I finish the instant coffee I found buried in the pantry. She climbs out carrying canvas gloves and pruning shears that look older than I am. Come on, daylight's wasting. No greeting, no sympathy for the vandalism she must notice. Just work to be done. I follow her into the poisoned section of field. She kneels, examining damaged plants with fingers that know what they're touching. This herbicide's commercial grade, not something you buy at a garden store. Whoever did this wanted fast results. Can they be saved? Ruth cuts away brown stems with decisive motions, her shears clicking rhythm against morning quiet. These are dead. But lavender's stubborn. If the roots aren't poisoned, they'll send up new growth. Cut back hard to healthy wood. It looks like killing, but it's not. You're telling the plant to fight back. She demonstrates, slicing into what seems like living tissue to reach green beneath. The scent releases sharp and clean, cutting through chemical stink. Your grandmother taught me this. When Thaddeus got sick and they couldn't maintain the fields, half the plants looked dead. Cecilia and I spent a month cutting back to nothing. Next season they came back stronger. I take the shears she offers. The handles fit awkwardly in my blistered palms. We work without talking for 3 hours. Ruth moves with efficiency born from decades, while I fumble and second-guess every cut. Sweat soaks through my shirt. The sun climbs higher, heat pressing down like judgment. Around noon, Ruth straightens, pressing hands against her lower back. You need supplies. Fence posts, wire, herbicide neutralizer if the soil's contaminated. Hardware store in town. Ask for Henry Henderson. Tell him I sent you. She starts toward her truck, then stops. What I said yesterday about Colton and that accident. There's more you should know. Thaddeus kept files, notes. He spent years investigating but never had proof solid enough for police. Check the barn. Under the floorboards near the back left corner. He showed me once, made me promise to tell you if you ever came home. Why didn't he go to police himself? Ruth's expression hardens. Because Sheriff Thompson and Preston Wolfe went to high school together. Because this county's small, and Preston owns half of it. Because sometimes systems protect power instead of truth. She drives away before I can ask more. Cedar Falls Hardware occupies a narrow storefront on Main Street, between a closed diner and a thrift shop. The door chimes when I enter, triggering a bell that sounds like it's been ringing since 1970. A man behind the counter glances up from paperwork. He's maybe 60, wearing a flannel shirt and canvas work pants, reading glasses perched on his forehead. "Help you find something?" "I need fence posts, wire, and herbicide neutralizer." Ruth Henderson said to ask for Henry. His posture shifts, attention sharpening. "You're the Bennett girl." "Marlowe. News travels fast. In a town this size, you breathe wrong, people know by lunch." He comes around the counter, assessing me with the same thoroughness Ruth had shown. "Thaddeus was my best friend. Known him since we were kids. Your grandmother made the best lavender honey I ever tasted. I'm sorry you didn't get to know them." The condolence feels genuine, lacking the performative quality I'd learned to recognize in foster care when adults said sorry for things they couldn't change and didn't really care about. Henry leads me through narrow aisles explaining the difference between treated and untreated posts, what gauge wire works for livestock versus gardens, how to neutralize soil contamination without killing everything in it. He loads materials into a cart with practiced efficiency. At the register, he tallies up costs. $273. I'll knock off $50 because you're Cecilia's granddaughter, and because I know what you're up against. You mean Preston? Henry's jaw tightens. Preston Wolf has been trying to buy up land in this valley for 15 years. Your grandparents were the only ones who never sold. 3 other farmers folded after mysterious equipment failures. Vandalism. Threats. Nobody could prove anything. But we all knew. Why does he want the land so badly? Henry leans forward, voice dropping though we're alone in the store. Water rights. There's an aquifer under this valley. Most of it sits beneath Lavender Hill. Word is a mining company or developer offered him millions if he could secure access. I pay with cash from the bank box, watching Henry load materials into Thaddeus's pickup. One more thing. Your father, Colton Graves. He worked summers at the Higgins farm. The accident that killed him. There was a mechanic who did a private inspection afterward. Man named Carl Webster. He's retired now, lives over in Helena. But he told Thaddeus the brake lines had been cut clean. Wasn't wear and tear. Wasn't negligence. My hands freeze on the truck door. You're saying someone murdered my father. I'm saying your grandfather believed it, and I'm saying you should be careful. Preston's gotten away with things for a long time. Desperate men do ugly things when they're cornered. The drive back feels longer, despite covering the same 10 miles. My mind races through connections. Colton, dead under suspicious circumstances. Yelena, dying in a car accident on an icy road. Thaddeus, finding me but too afraid to approach. Now Preston, threatening me, vandalizing the property, pushing me to sell. What makes this land valuable enough to kill for? I spend the afternoon repairing fence, driving posts into hard ground until my shoulders scream protest. Physical labor keeps my hands busy while my brain churns through possibilities. By sunset, I've replaced the damaged section with wire strung tight enough to sing in the wind. The barn calls to me after dark. I've avoided it except for that first quick look, but now I enter with purpose. Flashlight cutting through shadows thick with dust and old hay smell. Back left corner, Ruth had said, under the floorboards. I move past ancient farm equipment, past stalls that once held livestock, to where wood planks look marginally newer than surrounding boards. My fingers find a gap, and I pry upward. The board lifts, revealing space beneath. A metal box sits in the cavity, locked with a padlock I break using a crowbar I find leaning against the wall. Inside, a life's worth of investigation. Photographs of Colton working on tractors, his smile bright in summer sun, unaware his life would end at 19. Images of brake assemblies,
close-ups showing clean cuts that looked nothing like frayed wear. A mechanic's report dated 2006, signed by Carl Webster, detailing findings inconsistent with accidental failure. Thaddeus's handwritten notes fill a notebook, years of investigation compressed into cramped script. Names, dates, interviews with farmhands who worked alongside Colton, who heard Preston arguing with the Higgins family about land sales.
Timelines showing Preston's property acquisitions following suspicious incidents on neighboring farms. And at the bottom of the box, wrapped in plastic, a cassette tape labeled in Thaddeus's handwriting. Preston Wolf, October 2015, recorded at Lavender Hill. I searched the barn for something to play it on, finally discovering an old boombox on a shelf, its battery compartment corroded. But plugged into an extension cord run from the house, it whirs to life. The tape plays with warbling quality that suggests age and poor storage. Background sounds, wind, birds, the creak of this barn. Then voices. Thaddeus first, firm despite the tremor of illness. I know what you did. I have evidence. Colton's brake lines were cut. You were seen near that tractor the day before. Preston's voice, younger but unmistakable, carries the same cold certainty I've heard. You're a sick old man seeing conspiracies. Even if you had proof, who'd believe you? Colton was a drifter. Nobody cared about him then. Nobody cares now. Just like nobody cared when your daughter had her accident. The implication lands like a physical blow. Thaddeus must have felt it too, because his voice cracks. What did you do to Elena? Preston laughs, the sound empty of humor. Ice is unpredictable, Thaddeus. Accidents happen. You should sell this land while you still can, before you have your own accident. Old men fall, houses burn. These things happen to stubborn people who don't know when to let go. Static hiss fills the silence that follows. Then footsteps. The recording ends. My hands shake holding the boombox. This is confession. This is Preston admitting involvement in my father's death and threatening violence against Thaddeus, implying responsibility for Elena's crash. But Henry's warning echoes. Sheriff Thompson and Preston went to high school together. Who would believe an 18-year-old orphan with a recording from 9 years ago? I'm staring at the cassette when my flashlight beam catches movement outside the barn door. My heart hammers as I kill the light, pressing myself into shadow. Headlights sweep across the barn entrance, multiple vehicles, engines cutting. I shove the tape deep into my jacket pocket and grab the metal box, pulling it behind a hay bale. No time for better hiding. Preston enters first, backlit by headlights from what sounds like 3 trucks. 2 men flank him, bodies radiating the particular menace of people paid to intimidate. You've been busy, Marlowe. Most people would have taken my advice by now. His voice echoes in the barn's height. I step into light, keeping distance. Your men vandalized my property, cut my fence, poisoned my crops. Preston's smile barely qualifies as human expression. You can't prove that. But here's what I can prove. You're alone, inexperienced, with no support. My new offer is $50,000. Final chance. Sign the papers, or learn what happens to people who cross me. 50,000. You offered 120 3 days ago. That was before you became difficult. Prices drop for stubborn sellers. One of his men shifts position, cutting off the barn's rear exit. I'm trapped. I'm not signing anything. Preston's expression doesn't change, but something in his posture hardens. Then you'll learn the same lesson your father learned. And your mother. Some people don't know when to quit. The casual confession spills out like he's discussing weather. He doesn't know about the tape, doesn't realize Thaddeus documented everything.
Light suddenly floods the barn from a new direction. My stomach drops, thinking Preston brought more muscle. But Ruth Henderson steps into view, followed by Henry and 3 other people I don't recognize. They form a line between me and Preston's men. Ruth's voice cuts through tension. "We're witnesses now, Preston."
Whatever you're planning, we'll testify. Preston barely glances at them. You're trespassing during a private business discussion. Sheriff Thompson will be interested. A new voice, calm and carrying authority, comes from behind Preston's truck. So will the FBI. A man in a dark suit emerges from shadow, badge held up. He's maybe 40, with the weathered face of someone who's seen enough to stop being surprised. Special Agent William Thorne. I've been investigating land fraud and intimidation in this county for 18 months. Ms. Miller, I understand you have information relevant to my case. I pull the cassette from my pocket, hold it up in shaking hands. Preston Wolfe confessing to involvement in 2 deaths and threatening my grandfather. Recorded October 2015. Preston's face drains color. He takes a step backward. That's inadmissible. Illegal recording. Montana's a one-party consent state. If Thaddeus Bennett consented to recording his own conversation, it's perfectly legal. Mr. Wolfe, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, intimidation, and criminal threatening. The barn erupts into motion. Preston tries to run, but Agent Thorne moves faster, handcuffs clicking shut before Preston makes it 3 steps. His men stand motionless, unwilling to add obstruction charges. 2 more FBI agents materialize from vehicles outside. They secure Preston, photograph the barn, take the metal box and cassette with methodical efficiency. Agent Thorne approaches as his team leads Preston away. We'll need your statement. There'll be a trial. But the evidence you provided, combined with what we've gathered, should be enough for conviction. He made enemies. People are ready to talk now. What about Sheriff Thompson? Thorne's expression hardens. Suspended pending investigation. We're examining every case Preston might have influenced. The FBI convoy leaves. Taillights disappearing down the access road. Ruth and Henry and their friends stay longer, helping me secure the barn, offering quiet support that asks nothing in return. When they finally leave, the silence feels different. Not empty, just peaceful. I stand in the farmhouse kitchen, looking at 263 letters still scattered across the table, and something in my chest loosens. The fight isn't over. There'll be testimony, trial, months of legal proceedings. But the immediate threat has passed. For the first time since arriving, I can breathe without calculating threats. The next 2 months dissolve into rhythm I never imagined possessing. Ruth teaches me lavender cultivation with patience that feels like family. Henry provides materials at cost, sometimes showing up unannounced to help with repairs beyond my skill level. His son Wyatt materializes one Saturday morning, truck loaded with lumber and tools. He's 26, quiet in a way that suggests depth rather than emptiness, with hands that know how to fix things that are broken. Heard you need a new porch. He doesn't wait for confirmation, just starts tearing away rotted boards with efficient purpose. I watch from the kitchen window, unsure if I should offer help or stay out of his way. By sunset, the porch is structurally sound again, no longer threatening collapse. Wyatt packs his tools while I stand uselessly nearby. What do I owe you? Nothing. Your grandparents were kind to my family when we needed it. This is just returning favor. But he comes back the next weekend, and the weekend after. Projects multiply. Barn repairs, window replacements, a new roof section. Sometimes we work together. More often I watch him work while pretending to do other tasks, both of us navigating around a traction that builds slowly, carefully, without rush. By early July, the fields are ready. Ruth helps me cut lavender at dawn, when essential oils concentrate in the buds. We bundle stems with twine, hang them in the barn to dry. The scent fills every breath, coating my tongue with flavor I'm learning to love. The Cedar Falls Summer Festival happens first weekend of August. Ruth insists I set up a booth. You've got product. People will buy it. The booth materializes through community effort. Wyatt builds a frame. Henry provides tables. By Saturday morning, I have a display labeled Lavender Hill Farm, Elena's Legacy. People come. They buy bundles not because they need lavender, but because they're investing in redemption. The Bennett family reclaiming what was nearly stolen. An elderly woman approaches late afternoon, studying my face with uncomfortable intensity. You look just like her. Like Cecilia. Same determination. She buys 3 bundles, presses a 20 into my hand, waves away change. Your grandmother never gave up on anything worth keeping. Neither should you. By closing, I've made enough for winter supplies and then some. Wyatt helps me pack up as sunset paints impossible colors across the sky. You did good today. I feel like an imposter. His hand still on the banner he's folding. Belonging isn't something you're born with. It's something you build. The moment stretches between us, charged with possibility neither of us seems ready to name. Later, after Wyatt drives away, promising to help with next week's barn project, I find myself at Cedar Falls Cemetery. I bring lavender from our first harvest, 3 bouquets wrapped in simple brown paper. The cemetery is small, markers crowded close in patterns speaking to generations staying put. Thaddeus and Cecilia Bennett share a headstone. Simple granite. Names, dates, 1 word. Together. Beside them, Elena Marie Miller, beloved daughter, 1989 to 2009. I place lavender on each grave, kneeling in grass that needs mowing. Ba Cecilia. Own Thaddeus. Mom. 263 letters. 18 years of trying. I spent all that time thinking nobody wanted me. But you never stopped fighting. Mom, you died coming home to celebrate winning custody. You found me but stayed away thinking that was best. Ba, you kept this place alive because you believed I'd come home. The system failed us, but your love didn't fail. I'm home now, not because I was born here, but because this is where love waited. This is where 3 people refused to quit. I'll live the life you wanted me to have. I'll love like you loved, without stopping. I'm not a foster kid anymore. I'm Marlo Bennett, of Lavender Hill, of this family that fought for me. Thank you for 263 attempts. Thank you for never giving up. Wind moves through cemetery trees, carrying scent from my bouquets. The sun balances on the western ridge, painting everything gold and amber. I stand, brushing dirt from my knees. Wyatt's truck idles near the entrance. He'd followed at a distance, making sure I didn't face this alone. His expression asks silent questions as I climb in. I'm good. Actually good. We drive back as darkness settles. The house lights glow warm in windows I've learned to think of as mine. The barn stands solid. Lavender fields rustle with wind that sounds like whispered welcome. This isn't the life I expected 6 months ago. Not the California escape, not the anonymous disappearing act. But it's the life I needed. The life that was always waiting. Wyatt's hand finds mine across the truck's bench seat, tentative, asking permission. I don't pull away. We sit in the driveway, neither ready to break the spell of arriving home.
because that's what this is. Home. Not where I was born, but where I chose. Where I was chosen back. Tomorrow I'll work the fields with Ruth's techniques. Next week, Wyatt will help replace barn doors. In spring, I'll plant where poisoned sections have recovered. The work never ends. But I've spent 18 years being temporary. I'm ready to be permanent. Snow falls on Lavender Hill the morning of Preston's trial, February 14th, 6 months after the FBI took him away in handcuffs. I watch it accumulate from the kitchen window, coffee steaming in my hands, and marvel at how different winter looks when you're choosing to stay through it rather than surviving until you can leave. Ruth was right about Montana cold. It's brutal in ways Portland never prepared me for. Temperatures that drop to 10 below zero, wind that cuts through 3 layers of clothing, darkness that arrives at 4:30 and doesn't lift until 8 the next morning. The first time the pipes froze, I panicked. Wyatt talked me through thawing them with a hairdryer and heat tape, while Ruth brought over extra blankets and a lecture about keeping cabinet doors open when cold snaps hit. I've learned things I never imagined needing to know. How to stack firewood so it dries properly. Which direction to park the truck so the engine block heater works best. Why you don't touch metal with bare hands when it's this cold. Skills that mark me as belonging here now. Winter scars earned through staying. The house stays warmer than it did in autumn. Wyatt spent October insulating the attic, replacing windows, weather-stripping doors. He works quietly, efficiently, never mentioning that he's doing this for free, that every weekend spent here is time he's not earning money on paying jobs. When I try to pay him, he looks at me with those serious eyes and says the same thing he's said since August. Your grandparents were kind to my family. This is returning favor. But we both know it's become something else, something neither of us has named yet. Though it lives in the space between us when we work side by side, in the way his hand finds mine across the truck cab, in how he shows up every Saturday morning without being asked. Today I need to drive to Helena for the trial. 2 hours in weather that threatens whiteout conditions. Wyatt's truck sits in my driveway, has been there since he arrived at 6 a.m. to make sure I wouldn't try driving alone. The courthouse in Helena is newer than I expected. Glass and steel instead of the historic buildings I'd imagined. Security takes 20 minutes. Metal detectors, bag searches, questions about why I'm here. Agent Thorne meets me in the hallway, looking tired in a way that suggests this case has aged him. It's mostly procedural today. Jury selection finished last week. Opening statements, then prosecution witnesses. You'll testify Thursday. My stomach clenches. I've been dreading this since November when the subpoena arrived. Official letterhead making it real in ways the arrest hadn't. Having to face Preston again. Having to speak in front of strangers about things I've spent 6 months trying to process. Wyatt's presence beside me steadies something. He doesn't touch me in the courthouse, doesn't speak, just stands close enough that I can feel the solid fact of him. Ruth sits on my other side, Henry behind us. Small-town solidarity, making the 2-hour drive to support someone they've known less than a year because that's what community means here. The courtroom fills slowly. I see faces I recognize from Cedar Falls. Janet Higgins, whose father's farm employed Colton. Samuel Harris, who lost his land after mysterious well contamination. Diane Foster from the bank. More than a dozen people who've lived under Preston's shadow, waiting to see if justice actually works. Preston enters in an orange jumpsuit, hands cuffed, looking diminished without his suits and BMW. His eyes scan the gallery, land on me. I force myself to hold his gaze.
I'm not the scared 18-year-old he threatened in a barn anymore. 6 months of winter, of learning to survive cold and isolation, of choosing to stay when leaving would have been easier. That changes a person. His expression flickers with something that might be surprise or respect before his lawyer touches his arm, redirecting his attention. The prosecutor is a woman named Sarah Chen, mid-40s, with the controlled intensity of someone who's prepared for this moment for months. Her opening statement lays out a pattern spanning 15 years. Systematic intimidation, property destruction, suspicious accidents that benefited Preston's land acquisitions. She mentions Colton Graves, 19 years old, dead from brake failure that mechanical analysis proves was sabotage. Elena Miller, 20, dead on an icy road after winning a custody case that would have brought her home with money saved from 2 jobs. She plays the tape. Thaddeus's voice fills the courtroom, shakier than I remember from the barn recording, but still firm. I know what you did. Preston's response, that cold certainty. Colton was a drifter. Nobody cared about him then, nobody cares now. Just like nobody cared when your daughter had her accident. The silence afterward is absolute. Even Preston's expensive defense team looks stricken. Sarah Chen lets it sit for 3 full breaths before speaking. The defendant didn't just commit crimes, he destroyed families. 3 generations of the Bennett family were torn apart by his actions. Marlo Bennett, the granddaughter, grew up in foster care, moved 13 times, believing no one wanted her, while her grandparents sent 263 letters that were returned because the system lost track of her. All because Preston Wolf wanted water rights badly enough to kill for them. The defense tries to discredit the tape, argues it's taken out of context, suggests Thaddeus was mentally unstable. But Agent Thorne's testimony crushes that strategy. He presents 18 months of investigation, financial records proving Preston paid the men who vandalized my property, witness statements from farm hands who saw him tamper with Colton's tractor, documentation of the aquifer beneath Lavender Hill, and the mining company's multi-million-dollar offer contingent on securing water access. The trial runs 3 days. I testify Thursday morning, recounting Preston's threats, the vandalism, the final confrontation in the barn. His lawyer tries to paint me as an opportunistic outsider, but I've learned not to flinch at people questioning my belonging. Friday afternoon, the jury deliberates 4 hours. When they file back in, I'm holding Wyatt's hand so tightly my fingers go numb. The foreman stands, middle-aged man, weathered face, suggesting he's worked outdoors his whole life. On the count of conspiracy to commit murder in the death of Colton Graves, we find the defendant guilty. The words land like physical blows, guilty on all 7 counts. Conspiracy to commit murder, intimidation, criminal threatening, destruction of property. Each verdict another piece of justice for people who'd waited years. Preston doesn't react, just stares straight ahead as the judge sets sentencing for March. Outside, snow still falls, but softer now. Fat flakes that catch light and dissolve on contact. Ruth pulls me into a hug. First time she's done that. Henry claps Wyatt's shoulder. Diane Foster is crying, tells me Cecilia would be proud. We're halfway back to Cedar Falls when Wyatt finally speaks. You did good in there. Testifying. I know that wasn't easy. I stare out at white landscape rushing past, fields buried under snow that will melt in spring to reveal whatever survived beneath. I kept thinking about something my grandmother wrote, about how lavender survives winter by going dormant. It looks dead, but it's just protecting itself, saving strength for when conditions improve. Wyatt glances at me, then back at the road. And now? Now I think maybe I'm done just surviving. Maybe it's time to actually live. His hand finds mine across the seat.
We drive in comfortable silence, the kind that only comes when you've worked beside someone long enough to not need words filling every space. Back at Lavender Hill, Wyatt parks but doesn't immediately get out. The engine ticks as it cools. Snow accumulates on the windshield, cocooning us in white. I know it's Valentine's Day. I didn't want to say anything before the trial, but I got you something. He pulls a small box from his jacket. Inside, a bracelet made from twisted silver wire, delicate but strong. Hanging from it, a tiny lavender sprig cast in metal. I made it. The silver's from a belt buckle that was my grandfather's. The lavender's from a sprig you gave me in August. I pressed it, then cast it. The craftsmanship is stunning, the kind of detail that takes hours of focused work. I slip it on, watch it catch the dashboard light. It's perfect. I wanted you to have something that's both where you come from and where you are now. Like you. The kiss happens naturally, like something we've been building toward for 6 months without acknowledging. Soft at first, tentative, then deeper as 6 months of careful distance collapses into something warmer than the truck's heater could ever manage. When we finally pull apart, Wyatt's smiling. I realize I've never seen him really smile before. It transforms his face from serious to something younger, lighter. I should probably tell you I'm in love with you. Have been since you faced down Preston in that barn and didn't flinch. The words should terrify me. 18 years in foster care teaches you not to trust declarations of feelings, not to believe in permanence. But looking at him, at this man who spent 6 months showing up every Saturday to help me build a life worth staying for, the words feel like something I've been waiting to hear without knowing it. I love you too. Which is terrifying because I don't actually know how to do this. How to be with someone when I've spent my whole life leaving before I could be left. Then we'll figure it out together. Like everything else. That night, after Wyatt leaves with promises to return tomorrow, I sit in the living room with Cecilia's journals. I've read them all now, cover to cover, multiple times. But tonight I open to a specific entry, dated March 1995, 5 years after they bought this farm. The entry reads, Thaddeus asked me today why we named it Lavender Hill when we mostly grow wheat. I told him lavender reminds me that beautiful things survive even when conditions are harsh, that sometimes the strongest plants are the ones that learn to bloom in difficult soil. I think about that as I look around the room. The house is warmer now, not just from insulation, but from being lived in. My sketchbook sits on the coffee table, filled with drawings of the fields in different seasons. Ruth's casserole dish waits in the kitchen, this week's offering of chicken and dumplings. Wyatt's tools are scattered on the porch, waiting for tomorrow's project. Evidence of people who've chosen to be part of my life, and my choice to let them. Outside, February darkness presses against windows, but inside I've learned to make light. The wood stove radiates heat. The refinished floors gleam. Pictures line the mantel now. Cecilia and Thaddeus on their wedding day. Elena as a child running through lavender fields. My parents, young and laughing, before tragedy found them. And new photos, too. Me and Ruth in the fields at harvest. Henry showing me how to fix the tractor. Wyatt and me standing in front of the newly painted house. Spring will come. In 6 weeks, maybe 8, the snow will melt. Lavender will send up new growth from roots that survived winter dormancy. I'll plant the sections still recovering from herbicide damage. The fields will bloom again. Preston will be sentenced to 20 years minimum. The mining company has withdrawn their offer. Aquifer rights secured for the valley's small farmers. Sheriff Thompson faces his own trial in May. But tonight, what matters is this. I'm sitting in my grandmother's house, wearing a bracelet made by a man who loves me, in a town that's learned my name. I've survived my first Montana winter not by running when it got hard, but by learning what it means to stay. Tomorrow I'll wake up to snow-covered fields and coffee made in Cecilia's percolator. Ruth will probably call to check that I'm keeping the house warm enough. Wyatt will arrive mid-morning with lumber for the project we're building together. And that's enough. More than enough. It's everything I spent 18 years believing I'd never have. A place where I belong. People who stay. A future I'm choosing rather than surviving. The lavender taught me that. Beautiful things survive even in difficult soil. And sometimes they do more than survive. Sometimes they bloom.